Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her gloved hand against the ancient stone wall and felt nothing. No vibrations, no energy readings, no signs of the advanced technology her instruments claimed existed beneath the surface. The dig site on Kepler 442b stretched endlessly under the pale orange sun, filled with ruins that made no sense according to everything the galaxy knew about prehistoric civilizations. Still nothing, Doctor? Her assistant Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead. The atmospheric processors made the air breathable, but did nothing about the heat. Sarah shook her head and stepped back from the wall. 3 months of digging had revealed structures that defied explanation. The architecture was too advanced for the timeline, too sophisticated for any known ancient race. But the Galactic Confederation's Scientific Council had been clear in their assessment of her preliminary reports. Wishful thinking from a primitive human mind. She had stopped being surprised by such dismissals years ago. Humanity had been part of the Galactic Confederation for over 2 centuries, but they remained the unwanted stepchildren of a family that barely tolerated their existence. 800 species made up the Confederation, and humans ranked somewhere near the bottom in terms of respect, technology, and influence. The crystalline Zephyrians controlled most of the advanced manufacturing with their perfect molecular manipulation abilities. The Psychic Mentari Collective handled communications and diplomacy across vast distances with their telepathic networks. The insectoid Kralix managed logistics with their hive mind efficiency. Humans got the dangerous jobs no one else wanted. Mining in toxic atmospheres, exploring unstable planets, cleaning up after everyone else's mistakes. Sarah's communicator buzzed with an incoming message from Admiral Marcus Torres aboard the UES Endurance, one of the few ships in Earth's modest fleet currently patrolling this sector. Dr. Chen, we're picking up some unusual energy signatures from your location. Everything secure down there? She looked at her instruments again. All readings normal. Nothing on our end, Admiral. Probably interference from the magnetosphere. Copy. That. We'll be moving to the next system tomorrow. Try not to find any more impossible ruins before then. Sarah smiled despite her frustration. Admiral Torres was one of the few military commanders who took human scientists seriously, even when their discoveries made the rest of the galaxy uncomfortable. His small fleet of aging human ships might be outdated compared to Zephyrian crystal vessels or Mentari bioships, but Torres had earned respect through sheer competence and stubborn refusal to back down from fights. As evening approached, and the orange sun dipped toward the horizon, Sarah made one final sweep of the main structure with her deep scan equipment. The readings were impossible to ignore even if she could not explain them. Whatever lay buried beneath these ruins generated power signatures that her equipment could barely measure. More importantly, the energy pattern seemed almost familiar, though she could not understand why. Her communicator chirped with a priority message from Earth. Sarah frowned as she read the emergency code. All research teams were being recalled immediately for a discovery of unprecedented importance in Antarctica. The message contained coordinates for a site that had been buried under miles of ice until a recent seismic event exposed it. Pack everything, she told Marcus. We're going home. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks aboard a commercial transport, sharing space with Kralix traders and Mentari diplomats, who ignored the human passengers entirely. Sarah used the time to review the limited information Earth Command had provided about the Antarctic discovery. Satellite images showed a massive structure, clearly artificial, jutting from the ice like a metallic mountain. The energy readings made her equipment on Kepler 442b look like primitive tools by comparison. Earth looked smaller than Sarah remembered as their transport approached the blue-green marble floating in space. Home to 12 billion humans, it remained one of the most densely populated worlds in the Confederation, despite being considered a backwater planet by galactic standards. No rare minerals, no strategic location, no unique resources that other species wanted. Just stubborn humans who had somehow achieved faster-than-light travel through brute force engineering, rather than elegant science. The Antarctic research base buzzed with activity when Sarah arrived. Scientists from every major human institution had gathered around the exposed structure, which rose nearly a kilometer above the ice sheet. Its surface appeared to be made of some unknown metal that reflected light in ways that hurt to look at, directly. More disturbing were the energy readings that made sensitive equipment malfunction within 100 meters. Dr. James Harrison, Earth's chief xenoarchaeologist, met Sarah at the base perimeter. His face showed exhaustion and excitement in equal measure. "Sarah, thank God you're here. We need your expertise on prehistoric civilizations because this thing is definitely not human. But it's not like anything else in the galactic databases, either." They walked toward the structure together, passing teams of scientists taking measurements and samples. "How old are we talking about?" "That's the problem. Initial dating suggests it's been here for at least 5 million years. Maybe longer. But the construction materials and energy signatures don't match any known ancient species." Sarah stopped walking as they crested a small rise and got her first clear view of the structure. It was massive, yes, but what made her breath catch was the architecture. The flowing lines, the geometric patterns, the way different sections seemed to grow from each other rather than being assembled. She had seen this exact style before, carved in stone on Kepler 442b. "James, I need to show you something." She pulled out her tablet and displayed images from her recent dig site. These ruins, completely different planet, but look at the architectural similarities. Dr. Harrison studied the images with growing excitement. "My God, you're right. The proportions, the design philosophy, even the way they integrate with the natural landscape. But it would mean whoever built these structures had a galactic presence millions of years ago. A civilization advanced enough to build on hundreds of worlds, then completely disappear without leaving any other trace." They spent the next several hours comparing data from both sites. The similarities were undeniable, but raised more questions than answers. What species had possessed such advanced technology so long ago? Why had they vanished so completely? And most puzzling of all, why did their energy signatures seem to resonate with human neural patterns in ways that made no scientific sense? As night fell over Antarctica, Sarah stood outside the research station looking up at the ancient structure. Lights from the science teams twinkled around its base like offerings to some sleeping god. She could feel something stirring in the back of her mind, a sensation she had experienced at dig sites across the galaxy, but never understood. It felt like recognition, like coming home to a place she had never seen before. Her communicator buzzed with a message from Admiral Torres. His fleet had encountered something unusual near the edge of the solar system. Long-range sensors were detecting massive energy buildups from the direction of Zephyrian space. The Confederation was mobilizing fleets across multiple sectors, though official channels claimed it was just routine exercises. Sarah looked back at the Antarctic structure and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the polar wind. Whatever was buried in the ice was responding to something, its energy outputs increasing with each passing hour. And if her readings were correct, similar structures across the galaxy were beginning to wake up too. Something was coming. Something that would change everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. Sarah just hoped they would be ready for it. The structure had been humming for 3 days straight. Sarah pressed her palm against the metallic surface and felt vibrations that seemed to match her heartbeat. The sensation was unsettling and strangely comforting at the same time. Around her, teams of scientists worked frantically to understand what was happening as energy readings climbed beyond anything their instruments could properly measure. "Dr. Chen, you need to see this." Marcus rushed over with a tablet showing the latest deep scan results. The structure isn't just sitting on top of the ice. It goes down at least 3 kilometers, maybe more. And Sarah, the internal architecture is completely intact. She studied the scans with growing amazement. The structure was not a building or monument as they had assumed, but an entire complex buried beneath millions of years of ice. Corridors, chambers, and spaces that served purposes they could not identify stretched deep into the earth like roots of some impossible tree. "Have you found an entrance yet?" That's the strange part. There are no doors, no obvious access points, no breaks in the surface anywhere. It's like the whole thing was sealed from the inside. Dr. Harrison approached them with news that made the mystery deeper. I just got off a call with colleagues at 17 different archaeological sites across the galaxy. Structures matching. This one's energy signature are activating simultaneously on worlds spanning 4 different spiral arms. Whatever this is, it's not limited to Earth. The implications were staggering. A civilization capable of building across such distances would have required technology beyond anything the current Galactic Confederation possessed. Yet no historical records mentioned such a species, and no archaeological evidence had been found until now. Sarah was studying the scan data when something impossible happened. The solid metal wall in front of her began to shimmer like water, and a section dissolved into a doorway that had not existed moments before. Beyond the opening lay a corridor filled with soft blue light that seemed to generate itself from the walls. Did everyone else see that? Marcus whispered. The entrance remained open for exactly 30 seconds, then solidified back into seamless metal. Sarah stared at the wall where the door had been, her mind racing. The structure had recognized something, but what? She placed her hand against the wall again, this time focusing on the strange sense of familiarity she had felt since arriving. The metal grew warm under her palm, and she could swear she felt something responding to her presence. After several minutes, the doorway reappeared. It's keyed to humans, she breathed. The structure only opens for human contact. Dr. Harrison pulled out his communicator. I need to contact Earth Command immediately. If this technology responds to humans specifically, the Confederation is going to have questions we can't answer. But Sarah was no longer listening. She stepped through the doorway into the blue-lit corridor, drawn by an instinct she could not explain. The passage extended into the distance, lined with panels covered in symbols that looked almost familiar. As she walked deeper into the structure, lights activated ahead of her while darkening behind, as if the entire complex was following her movement. The corridor opened into a vast chamber filled with what could only be described as windows into space. Except they were not windows, but three-dimensional displays showing star systems, trade routes, and galactic maps that included regions of space the Confederation had never explored. At the center of the room stood a platform with a single chair that seemed designed for human proportions. Sarah approached the chair cautiously. As soon as she sat down, the room exploded into activity. The displays showed a galaxy teeming with human settlements, human ships, human technologies that made current Confederation science look primitive by comparison. She was looking at records of a human civilization that had spanned the entire galaxy millions of years ago. But why had it disappeared? And why had humanity forgotten its own history so completely? The displays changed, showing scenes of a war unlike anything Sarah had imagined. Entire star systems vanishing into darkness, fleets of ships battling entities that seemed to be made of pure void. The human forces were incredibly advanced, wielding weapons that manipulated reality itself, but they were losing. The final scenes showed a desperate decision. The human civilization chose to sacrifice itself to contain an enemy that threatened not just the galaxy but the very nature of existence itself. They sealed their technology, erased their own memories, and scattered to primitive worlds to live simple lives. The price of saving the galaxy was giving up everything that made them galactic powers. But the seals were not permanent. They were designed to activate if the ancient enemy ever returned, awakening humanity's sleeping potential when the galaxy needed them most. Sarah jerked back from the display as alarms began sounding throughout the research base. She ran back through the corridor as it sealed itself behind her, emerging to find chaos outside. Scientists were pointing at the sky where ships were appearing in Earth's orbit. Not human ships. Admiral Torres's voice crackled over the emergency broadcast system. All civilian personnel take immediate shelter. We have incoming vessels from 12 different Confederation species. They are not responding to communications, and their weapons are powered. Through her binoculars, Sarah could see the approaching fleet. Zephyrian crystal ships that looked like living gemstones, Mentari biovessels with surfaces that pulsed like heartbeats, Kralix hive ships bristling with weapon ports. The combined fleet represented more firepower than Earth had ever seen in one place. Dr. Harrison grabbed Sarah's arm. They're not here to investigate. They're here to take the structure by force. The lead ship, a massive Zephyrian dreadnought, broadcast a message on all frequencies. The voice was cold and crystalline, speaking in the arrogant tone Sarah had grown to hate over her career. Primitive humans of Earth, you have activated technology beyond your understanding and capability. By unanimous vote of the Confederation Emergency Council, this system is now under direct military administration. You will surrender all research materials and vacate the archaeological site immediately. Compliance is not optional. Sarah felt something stirring inside her, an anger that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than her own mind. The structure behind her began glowing brighter, its energy output spiking beyond all previous readings. Around the world, similar spikes were being detected at every human archaeological site. Admiral Torres's response was broadcast on the same frequency, his voice steady despite facing impossible odds. Confederation Fleet, this is Admiral Marcus Torres of the Earth Defense Force. You are in violation of Confederation law by entering our system with weapons powered and making demands without following proper diplomatic protocols. You have 1 hour to withdraw to standard diplomatic distance and request permission to conduct negotiations. The Zephyrian commander's laughter rang across space like breaking glass. Admiral Torres, your pathetic fleet of 12 ships cannot challenge the combined might of our alliance. Stand down or be swept aside. Sarah looked up at the ancient structure, now glowing so brightly it cast shadows in broad daylight. Deep in her mind, she could feel something awakening. Knowledge that was not hers. Abilities that humans were not supposed to possess. Power that had been sleeping for millions of years. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had never been primitive. They had been waiting. Around the world, other humans working near the ancient structures began experiencing the same awakening. In Moscow, a maintenance worker suddenly understood how to manipulate matter at the molecular level. In Tokyo, a student found she could interface directly with quantum computers. In New York, a construction foreman discovered he could see probability, streams extending into the future. The seals were breaking. Humanity was remembering who they really were, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first shot came from the Mentari bioship. A pulse of concentrated plasma that should have vaporized the Antarctic research station struck an invisible barrier 50 meters above the structure and scattered harmlessly into the atmosphere. The Confederation fleet paused in confusion while Sarah Chen stood in the station's observation dome, her hand pressed against the glass, somehow knowing she had created that shield without understanding how. Sarah, what did you just do? Doctor? Harrison stared at her with a mixture of awe and terror. She could not answer because she did not know. The knowledge had simply appeared in her mind the moment the attack began. She could see energy patterns in the air around them, probability streams flowing like rivers and the mathematical structures that held reality together. It was as natural as breathing and as alien as anything she had ever experienced. Across Earth, similar awakenings were accelerating. Admiral Torres stood on the bridge of the UES Endurance looking at tactical displays that suddenly made perfect sense in ways they never had before. He could see the approaching enemy fleet not just in 3 dimensions but across multiple probability timelines. He knew where they would move before they moved, understood their weaknesses before they revealed them. Admiral, his communications officer called out, "We're receiving reports from all our ships. The crews are experiencing some kind of enhancement. Engineering reports they can suddenly understand technologies they've never seen before. Weapons officers are interfacing directly with targeting systems. Sir, what's happening to us?" Torres studied the enemy formation and smiled grimly. 12 aged human ships against a fleet of hundreds representing the galaxy's most advanced military forces. Yesterday it would have been suicide to even consider fighting. Today he was calculating exactly how to disable every enemy vessel without destroying them. What's happening, Lieutenant, is that we're remembering who we are. The Zephyrian dreadnought fired next, sending a beam of crystallized energy that could cut through planetary shields. The beam struck the hull of the UES Defiant and was absorbed completely. The human ship's armor plating somehow converting the attack into power for its own systems. The Defiant responded with a weapon discharge that should not have been possible. From its outdated torpedo tubes, sending a projectile that phased through the dreadnought's shields and disabled its weapons without harming the crew. "Impossible," breathed the Kralix Hive commander. "Human technology cannot achieve such precision." But it was not human technology anymore. It was something far older and more advanced. The sleeping giants were waking up, and they were very, very angry at being threatened. Sarah found herself walking toward the ancient structure as the battle raged overhead. Each step filled her mind with more knowledge, more understanding of what humanity had once been and could be again. She was not just Dr. Sarah Chen anymore. She was a guardian of ancient secrets, a keeper of technologies that could reshape reality itself. The structure's entrance opened for her without hesitation. Inside, the blue-lit corridors had changed, now showing holographic displays of the current battle from perspectives impossible for normal sensors to achieve. She could see inside every enemy ship, understand the tactical thinking of their commanders, predict their next moves with absolute certainty. Sarah. Marcus had followed her inside, his own eyes now glowing with an inner light that meant the awakening had reached him too. "I can see the quantum signatures of their weapons. I know how to neutralize them." Around the world, humans were discovering abilities that defied explanation. In Beijing, a taxi driver found she could move through solid matter. In London, Chef realized he could manipulate time flow around himself. In Lagos, a teacher discovered she could communicate directly with electronic systems. The changes were not random. Each person was developing abilities perfectly suited to their personality and role in society. But with the power came memory. Fragments of the ancient human civilization leaked into awakening minds. Sarah saw glimpses of humanity's golden age, when human ships traveled between galaxies as easily as walking between rooms. She remembered technologies that could create matter from pure thought, weapons that fired concentrated causality, defenses that made entire star systems invisible to outside observation. And she remembered why it had all been given up. The enemy was still out there, beyond the edge of the galaxy, the void wraiths that consumed reality itself, turning matter and energy into absolute nothingness. Humanity had sacrificed their civilization to build a barrier that kept the wraiths contained, but barriers could weaken over time. The ancient structures were not just repositories of knowledge. They were early warning systems designed to awaken human potential when the old enemy stirred again. "Admiral Torres," Sarah broadcast directly to his mind, the telepathic communication feeling as natural as speech. "The Confederation fleet is not our enemy. They're going to be our allies whether they want to or not. Something worse is coming." Torres received her message while simultaneously coordinating the most impossible space battle in recorded history. His 12 ships were dancing around hundreds of enemy vessels, disabling them with surgical precision while taking no damage in return. Human crews who had never seen advanced technology were operating systems that responded to pure thought, as if the ships themselves were remembering how to fight. "Dr. Chen, I'm seeing tactical data that suggests you're right. Long-range sensors are detecting massive energy buildups beyond the galactic rim. Whatever's coming makes this fleet look like children with toys." The battle ended as abruptly as it had begun, not because the Confederation fleet was destroyed, but because every ship in their formation suddenly went dead in space. Not damaged, not destroyed, simply deactivated. Their weapons powered down, their engines stopped, their life support systems continued running, but nothing else responded to commands. Admiral Torres broadcast to the disabled fleet on all frequencies. "Confederation commanders, this is Admiral Torres. Your ships have been disabled but not harmed. Your crews are safe. We need to talk, and we need to do it quickly, because we have a much bigger problem than territorial disputes." The response came from the Zephyrian dreadnought, the crystalline commander's voice shaking with something between rage and fear. "What manner of trickery is this? Human technology cannot achieve such effects." "You're right," Torres replied calmly. "Human technology can't. But we're not just humans anymore. We're what humans become when the galaxy needs them to be." Sarah emerged from the ancient structure with knowledge that chilled her to the bone. The early warning systems were not just detecting stirrings beyond the galactic edge. They were detecting massive movement, vast fleets of entities that existed outside normal space and time. The void wraiths were not just stirring. They were coming back, and this time they were bringing friends. She looked up at the disabled Confederation fleet hanging in Earth's orbit like Christmas ornaments. Proud species that had dominated the galaxy for millennia, reduced to helpless observers of human power they could not comprehend. Yesterday she would have felt sorry for them. Today she felt only determination. They were going to need every ship, every species, every resource the galaxy could provide, because the real war was about to begin, and humanity could not fight it alone. They had tried that approach once before, and it had cost them their entire civilization. This time they would teach the galaxy to fight alongside them, whether the galaxy wanted to learn or not. The power that flowed through Sarah's veins was intoxicating and terrible. She could feel the potential for destruction and creation in equal measure, the ability to reshape reality according to her will. But more importantly, she could feel the responsibility that came with such power. Humanity had not been given these abilities for conquest or revenge. They had been given them to save everyone. The galaxy was burning. Not literally, though in some systems the distinction was becoming academic. Within 48 hours of humanity's awakening, panic had spread across 800 different worlds as species after species realized that everything they thought they knew about galactic history was wrong. Sarah stood in what had once been the Confederation Council chamber on Nexus Prime, the galaxy's capital world. The crystalline spires that had housed galactic government for 3,000 years now served as a briefing room for the most important military conference in recorded history. Representatives from dozens of species sat in stunned silence as she displayed evidence that shattered their understanding of reality. The precursor civilization that built the quantum gates, the dimensional stabilizers, the technologies that make galactic civilization possible. Sarah gestured to holographic displays showing ancient human colonies spanning the galaxy. That was us. Humanity didn't discover faster than light travel 2 centuries ago. We invented it 5 million years ago. The Mentari representative's psychic voice resonated with disbelief. Impossible. Our historical records go back millions of years. There is no mention of human presence. Because we erased ourselves from history, the display changed to show the final battle between ancient humanity and the void wraiths. We faced an enemy that threatened not just the galaxy, but the fundamental nature of existence itself. Our ancestors made the hardest choice imaginable. They gave up their technology, their civilization, their very identity to contain the threat. They scattered to primitive worlds and lived simple lives, trusting that their descendants would remember when the time came. Admiral Torres entered the chamber with reports that made the situation even more desperate. His uniform showed modifications that had not existed the day before, technology that responded to his thoughts and enhanced his already impressive tactical abilities. Around him, awakened humans were displaying capabilities that terrified even their allies. The outer sensor networks are detecting massive movement beyond the galactic edge, he announced. Whatever's coming is at least 10 times larger than the original incursion our ancestors fought, and they're not just bringing void wraiths this time. The displays showed long-range scans of something that should not exist. Fleets of ships that seemed to be constructed from crystallized nothingness, weapons platforms that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and worst of all, entire planets that had been converted into mobile weapon systems. The enemy had spent 5 million years preparing for their return. "How long do we have?" asked the Zephyrian representative, his crystalline form flickering with fear. Sarah consulted data that flowed directly into her consciousness from awakened humans across the galaxy. Based on current approach vectors and energy signatures, approximately 6 months before they reach the outer spiral arms. Maybe less if they have faster ships we haven't detected yet. The chamber erupted in arguments and accusations. Some species demanded immediate evacuation to distant galaxies. Others insisted the threat was a human deception designed to establish dominance. A few suggested surrendering to the approaching enemy in hopes of mercy. Admiral Torres silenced them all with a single gesture, his enhanced presence making him impossible to ignore. There will be no evacuation. There will be no surrender. There will be no mercy from entities whose only purpose is to unmake reality itself. Every species in this chamber has two choices: fight alongside humanity, or become extinct. The Kralix. Hive Commander's mandibles clicked with agitation. Even if we accept your claims about human origins, you number only 12 billion individuals across a few hundred worlds. How can such a small population defend the entire galaxy? Sarah smiled, grimly. Because we're not 12 billion anymore. We're becoming something more. The transformation was accelerating across human space. What had begun as individual awakenings was evolving into something unprecedented in galactic history. Humans were developing not just individual abilities, but collective consciousness, shared knowledge that made every awakened human part of a vast intelligence network. A construction worker on Tau Ceti could access the memories of an archaeologist on Earth. A farmer on Alpha Centauri could understand technologies being developed in laboratories she had never seen. But the real shock came when humans began awakening abilities in other species. It started small. A Mentari diplomat working closely with human negotiators found her psychic range extended across entire star systems. A Zephyrian engineer collaborating with human scientists discovered he could manipulate matter at the quantum level. A Kralix warrior training with human soldiers developed tactical awareness that rivaled any hive mind. The ability was spreading, not randomly, not forcibly, but through willing cooperation with awakened humans. The ancient technology responded to unity, to species working together toward common goals rather than competing for individual advantage. The precursor infrastructure wasn't just built by humans, Sarah explained to the increasingly amazed assembly. It was built by humans working with other species. Our ancestors didn't just sacrifice their civilization to save the galaxy. They created a network that could enhance every intelligent species when the need arose. Dr. Harrison had spent the week studying ancient records with teams of researchers from across the galaxy. His report revealed the true scope of what their ancestors had accomplished. The barrier containing the void wraiths isn't just a wall, he announced. It's a living system that draws power from galactic civilization itself. The more advanced and unified our species become, the stronger the barrier grows. Our ancestors didn't just hide from the enemy. They created a trap. The implications were staggering. Every advancement in galactic civilization, every alliance between species, every act of cooperation across cultural boundaries had been strengthening the ancient defenses. The Confederation itself, despite all its flaws and prejudices, had been part of humanity's long-term strategy. But the trap only worked if the galaxy was willing to unite completely. Not the loose alliance of competing interests that had characterized the Confederation, but true unity of purpose and action. Species would have to abandon millennia of distrust and work together as they never had before. The enemy is coming whether we're ready or not, Admiral Torres stated bluntly. They've had 5 million years to prepare for this moment. They know our weaknesses, they understand our technologies, and they've designed countermeasures for everything our ancestors could do. Our only advantage is that they don't know what we can become when we work together. Sarah looked around the chamber at representatives of species that had barely tolerated each other's existence just days earlier. Zephyrians who considered themselves the galaxy's natural leaders. Mentari who believed their psychic abilities made them superior to physical beings. Kralix who trusted only their own hive minds. Dozens of other species with their own prejudices and pride. The choice is simple, she said quietly. We can fight as separate species with individual agendas and lose everything. Or we can fight as one galaxy with a shared purpose and save everything. But understand this. If you choose unity, you're choosing to become something new. Not human, not Zephyrian, not Mentari, but something that encompasses all of us. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some species walked out rather than consider abandoning their independence. Others demanded guarantees about post-war power structures. A few tried to negotiate separate peace treaties with the approaching enemy. But slowly, as reports arrived of ancient structures awakening on their homeworlds, as their own people began displaying impossible abilities, as the scope of the approaching threat became undeniable, consensus began to emerge. The Zephyrian, Representative was the first to formally agree. Our crystal craft will serve as focusing arrays for your quantum technologies. The Mentari followed. Our psychic networks will coordinate communications across the galaxy. The Kralix pledged their hiveship manufacturing capabilities. Other species offered their unique talents and resources. Not all of them, but enough to begin building something unprecedented in galactic history. A unified defense force commanded by humans but incorporating every willing species. Ships designed with hybrid technologies that no single species could have developed alone. Weapons that drew on multiple forms of science and engineering. Most importantly, crews that thought with collective consciousness while maintaining individual identity. Sarah felt the network expanding as more species joined the alliance. The sensation was like watching a constellation come to life, each new partner adding brightness to an emerging pattern. They were becoming something their ancestors could never have imagined, and their enemies could never have prepared for. But time was running short. The approaching fleets were accelerating, their energy signatures growing stronger with each passing day. The galaxy had perhaps 4 months to prepare for a war that would determine whether reality itself continued to exist. The real work was just beginning. The first Void Wraith scouts arrived 3 weeks early. Sarah stood in the command center of the newly constructed Battle Station Omega, watching displays that showed reality itself beginning to unravel at the galaxy's edge. Entire star systems simply stopped existing, not destroyed or consumed but edited out of space-time as if they had never been there at all. The enemy had learned new tricks during their exile. Energy readings are off the charts, reported Commander Chen Liu, one of the awakened humans who now served as interface between organic crews and the hybrid technologies they had developed. Whatever they're using to unmake reality, it's more advanced than anything in our historical records. Admiral Torres materialized beside them, not through transportation, but through the quantum consciousness network that now connected all awakened beings across the galaxy. His physical body was aboard the flagship UES Defiance, but his awareness existed wherever it was needed most. All defensive positions report ready, he announced. 147 species have contributed to the unified fleet. Over 10,000 ships designed with hybrid technologies. Crews that can think collectively while maintaining individual initiative. We're as ready as we can be in the time we had. Sarah nodded while accessing tactical data from observation posts scattered throughout the galaxy. The approaching enemy force was larger than their worst estimates. Not just void wraiths, but entities that existed partially outside normal reality. Weapon systems that fired concentrated entropy, and something new that made her blood run cold. Torres, they have allies we didn't know about. Species from other galaxies that the wraiths conquered instead of destroying. They're not just trying to unmake our galaxy anymore. They're trying to use it as a staging ground for something bigger. The implications were horrifying. If the enemy succeeded here, they would have the resources and knowledge to attack every galaxy in the local cluster. This was not just a war for survival anymore. It was a war to prevent the unmaking of everything that existed. Dr. Harrison's voice crackled over the communications network from his position aboard the research vessel New Horizon. I'm analyzing the energy signatures from the scout ships. The good news is that our ancestors' trap is working. The unified civilization we've built over the past 4 months has strengthened the ancient barriers beyond their original parameters. And the bad news? Sarah asked, though she could already sense the answer through their shared consciousness. The enemy knows about the trap. They're not trying to break through the barriers anymore. They're trying to corrupt them, turn our own defenses against us. The first wave of scouts reached the outer defensive perimeter, and everything Sarah thought she understood about warfare changed. The enemy ships did not fire weapons or attempt to break through the defensive lines. Instead, they began broadcasting signals that caused reality itself to become unstable in localized areas. Report from Sigma Station, called out Lieutenant Park. Her enhanced awareness processing data streams from across the galaxy. Their sector is experiencing temporal fluctuations. Some areas are aging years and seconds, others are reversing causality. The enemy isn't trying to destroy our defenses. They're making the space around them impossible to defend. Sarah felt the collective consciousness of their alliance react with shock and fear. This was beyond anything they had prepared for. How do you fight an enemy that attacks the fundamental laws of physics? The answer came from an unexpected source. Marcus, her former assistant who had become one of the most advanced human technology interfaces, appeared in the command center with data that changed everything. "I've been analyzing the corruption patterns," he announced. "The enemy isn't creating these effects directly. They're using our own ancient technology against us, feeding corrupted data into the barrier systems to make them malfunction, but if they can corrupt the barriers, we can cleanse them." Admiral Torres saw the implications immediately. "You're talking about a direct interface with systems designed by our ancestors. The risk of mental damage or complete consciousness absorption is enormous." "So is the risk of letting reality collapse," Sarah replied. She could feel the weight of decision pressing down on her, the knowledge that someone had to make the impossible choice. "How many interfaces would we need?" Marcus consulted with awakened humans across the galaxy, their collective processing power calculating probabilities and requirements in real time. "At least 1,000 direct interfaces, probably more, and they would have to maintain connection throughout the entire battle. Some of them won't survive the experience. The enemy main fleet arrived before they could fully prepare. It was beautiful and terrible, an armada of ships that seemed to be built from crystallized darkness, weapons platforms that existed in 6 dimensions simultaneously, and something that Sarah's enhanced perception could only describe as weaponized concepts. The Void Wraiths had not just brought allies, they had brought the fundamental forces of entropy and dissolution themselves. "All stations, this is Admiral Torres. Execute Protocol Unity. All species, all ships, all consciousness networks, full integration now." The transformation was instantaneous and overwhelming. The loose alliance of different species became something unprecedented in the history of the universe. Not a hive mind that subsumed individual identity, but a collective consciousness that amplified the unique strengths of every participant while creating new capabilities that emerged from their combination. Sarah felt herself becoming part of something vast and wonderful. Her individual awareness remained intact, but now she could access the tactical genius of Zephyrian commanders, the intuitive understanding of Mentari psychics, the coordinated precision of Kralix logistics, and the innovative thinking of dozens of other species. She was still herself, but she was also part of a galactic mind that could think in ways no individual consciousness could achieve. The battle began across multiple dimensions of space and time. Human ships equipped with Zephyrian focusing crystals fired beams of pure causality that restored damaged reality. Mentari biovessels integrated with Kralix manufacturing systems began producing defensive drones that could exist in conceptual space. The awakened crews operated technologies that should have been impossible, guided by collective knowledge, that drew on the strengths of every alliance member. But the real battle was being fought inside the ancient barrier systems themselves. Sarah led 1,000 volunteers in diving their consciousness directly into the precursor network, fighting to cleanse the corruption that was spreading through reality's foundation. It was like trying to perform surgery on the universe itself, while enemy forces tried to kill the patient. The experience was indescribable. Sarah found herself thinking with the minds of beings who had lived millions of years ago, accessing technologies that existed as pure mathematics, fighting entities that were living contradictions in the logic of existence. Around her, volunteers from dozens of species worked together to repair damage that threatened to unravel everything. Some of them did not survive. Sarah felt each loss like a physical wound as consciousness after consciousness was absorbed into the ancient systems, or burned out by energies they could not withstand. But for every volunteer they lost, 10 more stepped forward to take their place. The galaxy was fighting for its existence, and no sacrifice was too great. The turning point came when Dr. Harrison made a discovery that changed the nature of the war itself. "Sarah, the enemy isn't trying to destroy the barriers anymore. They're trying to escape through them. The corruption isn't an attack. It's an attempt to open doorways to other realities. They want to abandon this universe entirely and find one where they never lost the first war." The implications were staggering. If the Void Wraiths succeeded in opening doorways to parallel realities, they would not just threaten this galaxy, but infinite versions of every galaxy that might exist. They would become a cancer spreading across the entire multiverse. Then we don't just stop them, Sarah broadcast to the collective consciousness. We cure them. The plan that emerged was audacious beyond anything previously imagined. Instead of simply defeating the enemy, they would use the ancient barrier systems to perform the ultimate act of restoration, not just cleansing the corruption, but healing the fundamental damage that had turned these beings into enemies of existence in the first place. It required channeling the collective will of every species in their alliance through the precursor network, using their unity as a focusing lens for energies that existed before the universe began. The risk was total obliteration for everyone involved. The potential reward was the salvation of not just their reality, but every reality that might exist. Admiral Torres made the decision for everyone. Execute protocol restoration, all consciousness networks, full commitment. We end this war by ending the need for it to exist. The final phase of the battle lasted seconds and eternities simultaneously. Sarah felt herself become part of something that transcended individual existence, a collective will focused on healing rather than destruction. The galaxy itself became their weapon, not to destroy the enemy but to restore them to what they had been before entropy and hatred consumed their essence. The Void Wraiths and their allies stopped their attack, not because they